Well, hey there, everybody. I'm Diane Lee. I am the Marketing and Communications Director here at ISI. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching us live, our Sustain It or Explain It podcast. We have a really exciting bunch of people here today to talk about the California High-Speed Rail. And one of those is Brian Kelly, the CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. And also we have Meg Cederroth, who is the Director of Planning and Sustainability appointed by the governor for this project. And lastly, ISI's Melissa Pennycad, our Managing Director, who's actually going to be talking a little bit later about verification with Meg. So thank you, everybody. Welcome to the program. Can't wait to get started talking about this. And the first question is going to go to Brian Kelly. Wanted to ask you about, Brian, this is a really big project over a long span. Talk to us about how this got started, a little bit about the background, and just take us into that groundbreaking moment for you guys. How long are we talking here?
Well, it's been a while. I mean, I think discussions about high-speed rail have been going on in California since the 1980s. In fact, I recall in my prior job when I was the Secretary of Transportation under the Brown administration here in California, I once came across a memo that talked about building high-speed rail, and it was dated 1980, an internal Caltrans memo. So we've been talking about it a long time. In 1996, the legislature created a commission to start to study the idea. Can we do this in California? What will it take? That commission morphed into sort of what is now the High-Speed Rail Authority, and the sort of big milestone moments came in the form of funding, which were the first was in 2008. We went to the voters here in California and asked the voters if they would be willing to issue bonds to start an investment in this project. Now, it's very important for everybody to understand that was a $9 billion bond ask for a project at that time that was estimated to cost some $45 billion. So it's not like they said, here's all the money you need to do it. They said, yes, we want to pursue this. Here is some funding. Go find private money, go find federal money, go find other money, and try to get this thing built. And so that was 2008. Shortly after that bond bill passed, we did start to go find federal money. And we got, since that time in 2008 and again in 2010, we got federal funds that total about $3.5 billion. And then in 2014, the legislature created something called the Cap and Trade Program, and which brings in auction revenue into the state, and we spend those dollars on green, clean transportation and infrastructure projects. And the High-Speed Rail Authority gets 25% of those funds every year. And so between 2008 and 2014, roughly, we put together three key funding streams: the bond bill, some federal money, and our cap and trade program. And then with that, construction started. There was a physical ground breaking, I believe, in 2015 on this project. I was not in this position at that time. I was still the Secretary of Transportation. But there was a groundbreaking on the project at that time. The federal dollars that came with very tight expenditure requirements. We had to move them quick. So we got into construction early, maybe a little bit too early on the project. And since that time, we've been really moving forward on the construction in the Central Valley. The first 119-mile segment of this project is fully under construction today in California. And I've got, we've now sent out over 5,000 workers on that since construction began. We are moving at a pretty good clip now. There's been a lot of starts and stops when we first got going, but now we've sort of, I guess I would say, we found our groove a little bit on the construction side, and we're really starting to move that in a more efficient way. I just say this, and then I'll be quiet and answer other questions. But what we want to do, we got the first 119 under construction, and what the Newsom administration here in California is proposing is to extend that 119 to 171 miles in the valley, so that connects major cities of the Central Valley: Merced, Fresno, Bakersfield, three of the really fastest growing cities in California. by the way. And so we want to get an operating segment started there that is fully electrified, fully high speed. We have a lot of work to do in our legislature to get that approved, and that's a conversation that we're having this year in real time. And so we'll know more about exactly where we are as we get toward the end of the budget cycle, which would be in June of this year. But the reason that's important is there's very, very good, solid transit benefits from starting that system. We move from diesel service to renewable powered electric high speed service. We reduce travel times by over 100 minutes in the valley. We connect to more traditional services in Merced that go to Sacramento in the Bay Area. And it's really just the first building block of the system. While we would start that operating system, we're also looking to complete the environmental work for all of the system between San Francisco and LA and Anaheim and get that done by the end of 22, early 23. So we've got a lot in front of us. These construction sites are huge. As you mentioned, I mean, the entirety of this project, just that first phase is a 500-mile stretch. We're in construction on 119 now, which if you think about that, that's a 2-hour drive just to go through the construction segments. And so that's what we have underway now. There's been a lot of challenges from the get-go on this project. I do believe we're moving in a much more efficient way now, and I think we're getting better and better. And I expect we've learned a lot from early lessons, and I expect we're going to be even better in the days ahead. So looking forward to getting this system built in the Valley to start, and then working closely with the Biden administration, our federal partners, on expanding it outside of the Valley into the Bay Area and Southern California.
And, this is very valuable information to a lot of our viewers out there because this is such a big project. And so there's so many lessons to be learned. And I know a little bit we're going to be talking about verification and Envision and the sustainability of it. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you just a few more of the specifics on the statistics. So I'm going to put up whoops. There we go. Yeah. I'm going to put this up and I'm going to let you speak to you already kind of talked about the some of it, but go into a little bit more detail on the specifics, if you would, about some of this.
So that the depiction on that slide there is kind of a status check of where we are right now. We have 35 active construction sites open over that 119-mile stretch. And we have dispatched more than 5,200 craft laborers out to those construction sites since the start of construction. So, in California, I'd say that the three things that we want to achieve with our transportation investments, are primarily, one, we want to improve mobility, and nothing changes the mobility equation for us. There's no single project that does more than this because of the speeds that the trains can travel, and really reducing travel times like nothing else can do. And so the mobility box we check easily. The other one is the environmental box. And in California, we have a pretty strict regime in place to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions over time between now and 2030, and then ultimately between now and 2050. In transportation, moving from fossil fueled services like cars or passenger rail services from diesel or fossil fuel to electric, and particularly renewably powered electric, is key to meeting our goals and objectives. And so that's the other part of what we're doing here on this project. And so, and the last part is, of course, the economic development part. And that's what I'm most, so proud of right now. As we've gone through this COVID-19 pandemic and we've seen mammoth impacts across the country on the economy and jobs, I'm proud to say that in California, even though we were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of how we do our business, we were still able to create new jobs, and we were able to expand those construction sites. And I couldn't be more proud of the team and the work we did to see that happen. California lost on the order of 1.6 million jobs during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And since 2018, we have doubled the number of workers dispatched to our job site. So this kind of investment, the three things it hits on mobility, environmental, and economic, never more important than now. And so right. Proud of the work, more to do, got a lot of work to do with our federal partners to keep this going and build a good operating system in California. But we're on our way. And I think with the Biden administration, we got a good chance of advancing this ball.
I think you do too. And I know a lot of us are watching it all across the country because there are other places who want high-speed rail,
Yep.
Washington to New York. I can say St. Louis to Chicago.
Yes.
I've been out west, and boy, is it no more is it needed than out west. And I know we can look to other countries who fared pretty well. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Melissa so she can ask some questions of Meg on what you were talking about, the environmental impacts. But before we do, I want to remind our users and followers, you can comment, ask questions. Please feel free to tell us where you're from if you're watching today and what city you're from. We'd love to showcase some of that. So please feel free to do so. And I'm going to turn it over to Melissa for a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Diane. And nice to see you, Meg. You and I have been working quite closely for the last, year, maybe even a little bit more than that, on your project and the sustainability attributes that it has. And just so that everybody knows, like, one of the really exciting things for ISI is that this is not only such a transformational project for the people of California, but it's had it's really left a positive impact on us at ISI as well. The size and scale of this project and the decision to go through verification and have all of the environmental, social, and economic attributes verified by a third party was tremendous, and you should absolutely be commended for it. And I was just wondering if you might speak a little bit about the decision to go forward and actually have some of the sustainability attributes verified by an independent third party, and kind of like what the benefits were to you and things like that.
Oh, certainly. So I think benefit number one is I listen very closely to my bosses, and both Brian Kelly and our COO, Joe Hedges, said to me probably 18 months ago, we do so much in the sustainability space. We have a policy that really set a very clear agenda for the program to not just deliver all of the sustainability benefits that Brian eloquently articulated, but also we want to be delivering the project in a way that is moving the needle on business as usual practices for the delivery of infrastructure. So really, from planning through construction and operations, deliver sustainable infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And we've been at work at this for about more than a decade. Our board in 2008 directed the system to run on renewable energy. That was a very significant commitment at the time. Mm-hmm. And along the way, we've identified some very public policy leading practices to start to bring integrity behind that idea of sustainable infrastructure. But along the way, we find ourselves, hitting these amazing milestones, like recycling 97% of all of the construction waste, recycling 100% of the concrete and steel from construction, requiring the cleanest vehicles in construction, focusing on jobs for disadvantaged workers and targeted hiring practices, and working with communities to make sure that the system is well integrated into the local fabric. All of these activities all fall under the umbrella of sustainability. We work incredibly hard to get them accomplished, and we find ourselves constantly in sort of a defense or, well, you guys say you're doing it, but can you really prove it? And so both Brian and Joe turned to me and said, is there a way that we could have our statements around sustainability and our practices across the entirety of our program verified? And I said, there sure is. It's called Envision, and it's run by the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure. And, we had been in some conversations about the project and the program for a while. And what we recognized was this would be a pretty significant undertaking. As Brian articulated, this is a complex and very big project. And demonstrating sustainability using the Envision program means you're looking across 64 different categories and are pulling evidence from a tremendous range of sources. But to us, it was important to do that because taking all of this evidence and providing it to someone who doesn't know us, who's never met us, and is just reading that evidence remotely, is a way of bringing some integrity behind our focus on this as a piece of sustainable infrastructure, and to start demonstrate that we're achieving that. And it was quite an undertaking.
Well, I mean, this sounds so great, Meg, and thank you. And it sounds like it was overall a positive experience, lots of lessons learned. And I can say the same for us, because it was also an opportunity on our end to really grow as well and see how Envision can be applied on such a significant multi-phase project. So, you know, for us too, this was also tremendously rewarding, and we're very, very proud to have provided that kind of stamp of approval on such a great project. I think a lot of people might be really interested in digging in a little bit on the greenhouse gas emissions reduction, because I think that that's, you know, one of the biggest benefits is getting cars off the road, transforming the way that people move. And, you know, one of the things that we were looking at, and I want you to clarify this because it's so impressive, and I think people need to wrap their heads around how significant this is. 100 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions are being reduced by this project. Let's talk a little bit about how does one even go about doing that? And can you maybe put it into some context for people to understand the magnitude of that positive outcome?
Sure. That is the first 50 years of operation, and Brian put his finger on it, getting people out of automobiles. And crucially, because of how high-speed rail works as a transportation tool, right? Whisking you across 600 miles of the state in under 3 hours is attractive to the average traveler, because that is a travel time certainty and a pretty short journey, which you decide you're going to take rather than going to the airport an hour ahead of time, going through security, waiting, watching your plane be delayed, and then landing, and then sitting on the runway waiting for a gate to open up. You know, the power of the project is not just that we see mode shift from automobiles, and a significant amount of mode shift, but also capturing the air market as well. And California is incredibly focused on greening its transportation sector writ large, and electrifying that transportation sector. And high-speed rail is a very important tool in that overall project. So but I would say demonstrating that greenhouse gas emissions benefit means, you know, taking all of our ridership modeling information, compacting all of our assumptions around emissions factors, and we supplied it to the verifiers, who then combed through it and had questions about how mode shift would work, how we came up with the ridership figures, and just illustrating how powerful the system can be. And I think we did keep having that. We have this problem occasionally on the project when we say, well, it's going to be $1 billion. And people say, well, did you mean billion with a B? Yes, we did. And the same token on the greenhouse gas emission side, when we say, you know, every year it's on the order of 2 million metric tons can be diverted or avoided because the system will be operating. And I think the other side of that coin was also unpacking how we would approach our renewable energy goal and running the system entirely on electricity and renewably sourced electricity as well. But it was worth doing. I keep laughing because the pain is kind of done now. All of the work of uploading lots of documentation is over, and now we can just, for the moment, just enjoy having gotten it complete.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, there's also so many innovative things that you all are doing. So, you know, another thing that kind of really jumps out at me is also some of what you're doing during construction, right? So Brian was talking about all the jobs that are created and how California has been able to fare better through the pandemic, partially because of this project. And then there are some really innovative things in construction, things around like social equity and justice considerations. So hiring people from historically underrepresented or underserved communities, I think, was a big goal. And also carbon sequestration during construction. You know, these are some other things that like really jumped out at me when I was looking at the project, and maybe one or both of you might speak a little bit to those types of things.
Sure, I'll kick it over to Brian to talk about the jobs and the jobs benefit now, because that's really pretty.
I did comment earlier about you know, the expansion of construction job opportunities, which are really well-paying jobs that sustain families. So you know, those are important jobs for us. But the other thing that's important about that, our work is primarily in some of the most disadvantaged communities in California right now. When we started back in 2008, just on the heels of the housing bust, if you will, the nation, and certainly in California, it was an acute impact, and a very acute impact in the region that we happen to be starting construction in. I think Fresno County at that time had an unemployment rate that was somewhere between 17 and 22%. It was unbelievable. And so at one time, a study came out that said for the jobs recovery that's been done in that county alone, we were responsible for about a third of those jobs every year. So, very proud of that. I think of all the construction workers that are out toiling every day on those job sites, on the order of 80% of them, just short of 80%, live in those regions. They're from, live, reside, raising families in those regions. And again, those remain some of the more economically challenged parts of California. So again, very proud of that. And then just one other comment, I thought about something when Meg was talking just about, what this project does that I think maybe we don't always tout or people always think about. But, without this project in California, we really, you fly between Northern and Southern California. We have a lot of flights a day that does that. Many of them are delayed because of demand. Our airports are all bursting and calling for more, room for runways and things like that, which are hard to get done. But it's also true that our travel time now from the Bay Area to LA if you're driving, is about an 8-hour drive. And if you try to take a passenger rail trip today between those two regions on the fossil fuel diesel services that are provided, it's about a 12.5-hour train ride. We're trying to offer that in under 3 hours. And so there's just the magnitude of that in terms of what that means for mobility. Why would people get out of their cars? Well, the answer is because it's such a better option than what's otherwise offered today. And so as listen to Meg talk about parts of this project, I just wanted to remind folks that. The other thing that's really important for us, the main thoroughfare in California that gets you from Northern to Southern California is Highway 5. In total, it's about a 400-mile more highway stretch, but the stretch between Northern California and LA, was largely built over a 30-year period as a bypass of the Central Valley cities. It does not go through the Central Valley cities, so it does not connect LA, the Central Valley, and the Bay Area. It bypasses the Central Valley. And one of the things that we were directed to do in our bond bill was connect the Central Valley with the coastal areas of California. That's why our route goes right through the cities in the Central Valley, and really changes the game, I think, for how companies might locate facilities or opportunities for employees to expand the areas they could look for housing and things like that, and still get to a job site in a reasonable period of time and through a faster and cleaner alternative. So those are, I know I'm off topic a little bit, but as I heard Meg talk a little bit, I just thought, man, these are the other elements of the project that are so important, and an understanding of what we have without it versus what we have with it is really the reason to do it. So I just wanted to throw that in.
It's definitely needed for sure. And if I know you've got a meeting coming up at 12:30. So I wanted to, we're getting some comments that I'd love to put on the screen for you. So, and there's a question coming up too, real quick, but this one's from John from Kenya, CEO of Kenya Green Building Society, watching from Africa, and says it's a great discussion going on. Impressive to note the careful consideration of the sustainability and resilience in the infrastructure project that you're doing. Here's a question that they said they're interested in how you're using the economic development case discussed to counter perceptions that sustainability is a separate and costly adder to an aspirational project like this. And in short, demonstrating that this issue crosses the aisle, a key quality to expanding this is hopefully upcoming in the infrastructure bill. So pretty savvy folks. I know you've got 5 minutes or 4 minutes, really. Can you kind of address that or speak to that?
I will say I think there's now a more focused national conversation that we've sort of already had in California, and am encouraged to see it now occurring on the national level, where we walk through this sort of false choice of you either have to do economic development or sustainability, and and it's such a false choice, and that's what we're showing, is that no, you do both, and actually we have to do both because the objectives of what we are trying to do are both on the, particularly in the era of climate change, are on both the greenhouse gas reduction, candidly the reduction of other pollutants that are not greenhouse gas emissions, and at the same time, expanding opportunity and jobs. And it's just about building the right kind of thing. Whether we had all the sustainability elements of this project or not, this is a very expensive project. It will be very expensive. But I guess I would call them the incremental pieces of making sure we're using the best available equipment during construction, the concurrent planting of trees, the conservation of land that we're doing as we're offsetting our work, it's a transformative project. And transformative to me doesn't only mean mobility or economically, but really that environmental part. And look, we're just in a new era. It's a different time. It's a different place. I know it when I first started 25 years ago in transportation policy, it was all about, let's build this thing so we can improve our mobility, period. Okay, but that's just not enough in transportation anymore. And it's just, now we have acute things we're trying to solve. And I guess my only point is you don't have to, solving one does not mean at the sacrifice of another. You solve them both. We are expanding and bringing into this project important sustainability elements, and we're doing it because it's necessary for us to achieve our policy objectives in California and really across the nation. And we're also having great economic impact in one of the most disadvantaged places in the country. And so we're doing both. And I just think that's part of the transformative nature of this. That's what we're trying to do. And it's not a choice. You don't have to choose between economic development or jobs and sustainability. You can achieve both. And that's really what we're trying to prove.
Well, how refreshing to hear you say that. I mean, I think we're all smiling and just everybody's overjoyed to hear it. It's about time people started saying it. And that's what this podcast is all about. Sustain it or explain why you're not.
Yeah.
So, Brian, I'll let you go because I don't want to make you late for your meeting, but I really, really enjoyed listening to what you had to say. And I think a lot of people really found it valuable. So thank you. And
thank you. Thank you. Let me just say I appreciate being here today, and I also appreciate the work we were able to do with ISI. This was an important exercise for us, as Meg articulated well earlier. We know we're incorporating the right practices. It was important that somebody else be able to take a look at that and tell us how we're doing in reporting. And I just can't really thank you enough for the work. So thank you.
Thank you, and you have a great day. All right. And we're going to stay on and we're going to continue talking about sustainability and all of that good stuff. And in fact, if you guys don't mind, we have a question on that. or at least a comment. So maybe we can continue this discussion on greenhouse gas emissions. Hello from Orange County, Sustainability Coordinator at Gensler. Say they want to continue on this conversation of the greenhouse gas emission reductions and the importance of doing not only the little things, but not only the big things, but the little things to reduce all aspects of construction and all of that. So if you want to continue on this discussion, and we would love to hear your thoughts, Meg.
Sure. There's so much to talk about, as Melissa knows. And I really appreciated Brian getting some time with Brian, because he's done a really good job of articulating the overall of the project, as well as some of the finer elements that really make a difference. And one of the things that Melissa mentioned that we focused on early was not just, yeah, sure, we'll have this great train in like 15 years that people go back in the time. Now it's about 7 years away. But rather than wait for that benefit to come later, we focused on things we could do now. And we set a goal back in 2013, 2014 to say we would have a net zero construction emissions. And that's a very audacious goal. And it's important because it then helps to steer all of our practices toward that goal. So we focus on incorporating cleaner equipment, electric-driven equipment where we can. It's focusing us now on setting zero emissions vehicles goals for the construction fleet. As Brian said, it's 120 miles in construction, and we'll keep expanding from there. And so when you're just doing a site drive, that's a 2-hour drive, 120 miles in usually a Ford F-150 running on diesel or gasoline. And so we, thankfully, California has pushed so hard on the zero emissions vehicle market, we can start incorporating those requirements into our construction and start bringing down that boundary. But at the same time, we've focused on practices like everyone's classic tree planting, some forest restoration projects as well that we funded with partners. The tree planting is happening in disadvantaged communities, so that, you know, a community that isn't necessarily going to have a station or something, some benefit associated from the project, has a earlier benefit now in terms of reducing the heat island effect, providing a shade canopy for playgrounds and recreational facilities. And it was important for us to do that because it starts kind of, you know, creating a better balance of, we know we'll be doing construction for a long time. We want to be matching that with the best practices around sequestration as well. And we've also been focused a lot on conservation and habitat restoration as well, and on a scale which, because we're such a large project, we can focus on landscape level practices. And then I won't go into it, it's super in the weeds, but we also focus on our materials and our upstream emissions and what we can do to be shaping the supply chain to be more transparent and allow owners to make better choices about the materials you're using on these major infrastructure projects.
You know, Meg, when I hear you and Brian talk about the project and all of the things that you're doing, you know, there are people obviously that are tuning in that know a lot about Envision, but for people who might not, you know, I think it's really worth zeroing in on the fact that Envision is a framework that it so broadly encompasses all of these types of considerations, everything from materials use to reducing energy, the use of renewable energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, jobs, you name it, right? And listening to the aims of the project and what it's already accomplished aligns so well with Envision. And I don't think we've even mentioned on this podcast yet that this project got platinum. And so
right.
maybe if you could tell us a little bit about what platinum is and like what it means to you, that would be great.
Okay, well, there's two ways of answering that, or multiple ways of answering that. There's the platinum, means we got more than 50% of the points that we could get, and the team worked very hard to be assembling all of the documentation to show others that what we claim is true. Mm-hmm. You know, that was kind of the great part of this third-party robust verification. Platinum is also the highest level that you can achieve. And so we maybe it's the California context where we're like, but we have such a great regulatory context and this project is doing so much. It's jobs, it's housing, it's transportation, mobility, it's transformative. Surely we need to aim for platinum. And so we were really happy to have achieved that very high mark. But then I think, more widely, having that as a statement about the project also illustrates for people that that there's substance behind. There is a way of articulating the project's sustainability, which, as you know, it's complex. It crosses so many different aspects. And so being able to sum it up in sort of one quick fact or nugget is helpful. Some people will take away that, oh, it's an Envision Platinum project, which means, I think there's respect for the robustness of the ISI and Envision verification process, so people recognize we've had to go through the rigor of that work as well.
That's awesome. So I think I've got only one last question before I kick it over to Diane, and it's a loaded one, Meg.
Oh, good. Okay.
Be prepared, Meg. Watch out.
But would you say to projects that are interested in sustainability that it's worth going through verification and using Envision?
Yes, it is. It's and not everyone has a $80 billion project across 500 miles across the geography of California, right? Although Envision worked for a project that is across multiple scales, from planning through construction, across multiple geographies. It just meant that our Envision verifiers had to load like 56 documents up for one credit. But it was definitely worth it. It provided an opportunity for the team to look at what we're doing well, look at what we can demonstrate well. It also was, I really respect the extensive team I work with in the authority. There are hundreds of people that work on this project, and absolutely every one of them is doing something that tangibly affects the sustainability of the project. It is a team sport. And what we found, kind of valuable about the process was you're going back and talking to people about their work and unearthing all of these amazing practices across the sweep of the project delivery. And so it was just another opportunity to engage with and make connections and to talk to people about their work and get excited about what people are doing. Or for some people who don't necessarily think in the sustainability realm all the time, it was understanding how their work actually did play a role in the sustainability-ness of the project. And so it was kind of great from that kind of wider communication or team building aspect. And then I would say finally, the other way that it, I was going to say the other way that it was really effective, but I totally lost my train of thought there.
It happens in live broadcasts. If you get it back, just interject. But I want to tell you that we are getting a lot of comments. So I wanted to put it up on the screen for you. And if you think about what you were going to say,
Yes, I remembered what I was going to say, which it also, I have to say, yes, we got platinum, and yes, it showed us where we're doing really well, but we aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And this was an exercise writ large that illustrated for us some areas where we realize we can be more thoughtful, we can be more intentional, and work toward better outcomes. It also showed us some areas where, because of the nature of what we're doing as a project, like that's as good as it's going to get. We're working very hard to do well, and we've reached sort of a kind of natural limit to what we can achieve. But okay, so
and that's what's great about Envision is it encourages you to do that. It encourages you to go that much farther and to really put yourself to critically think about that project and try to go as far as you can with it in the sustainability realm. And resiliency and with equity. And nothing's perfect. And so when you hear negative comments and things like that, you have to say, hey, nothing is perfect. We are trying. And that's what's what matters. So I think this is going to be an example for many places who are interested in high-speed rail. And I think our followers are thinking the same thing. In fact, Robert says outstanding. He loved the answer by the CEO and by you about he wants you guys to share this widely because more people need to know about this. So we got another person who just wants to say hello from Mexico City. Hey there. So we get people from all over who really care about this and care about what you're doing. And I know one aspect that we haven't really talked about that I think Brian kind of touched on was the legislative aspect. Because if I'm not mistaken, there's a bill going through California and it mentions Envision. Is that right?
That's very true.
Tell us about that. What is this all about?
What is this all about?
I love those questions, by the way.
It was a bill introduced in December and then reintroduced more recently by Senator Allen, I believe, from Southern California. And it's an interesting bill. It actually speaks to it calls attention to certain projects, transit projects that are intended to deliver the values that we've been, talking about extensively today, right? Reduce greenhouse gases, improve mobility, connect communities to jobs and economic opportunity. And also, if a project is meeting, not just that kind of prime directive around mobility and greenhouse gas emissions and air quality improvements, but also is paying attention to ASCE, sustainability standards, and vision, or other sustainability criteria or frameworks, and is using those frameworks in the delivery of the project, then that project could receive some relief from litigation and the timing of litigation, which just means the project has a window of time where it knows it can keep moving forward, which is incredibly valuable when you think about infrastructure projects take a long time. And the community can be really frustrated when they think, well, come on, I need this bus line now. I need this bridge fixed now. I need that thing fixed now. It's hard to explain that, well, it's held up in litigation, this is happening. And, sometimes litigation happens for very important reasons. And then sometimes it's just people trying to, the sort of bananas or NIMBY approach to some projects that we contend with.
Yeah,
not in my backyard.
No, exactly. But it's good to see that they thought about that and they recognize that this is important. And that's all that can happen. So
right. We'll watch that bill. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited. So keep us informed. And a lot of the folks who watch this podcast are advocacy folks, so they really care about this. But have we missed anything? Is there anything we haven't talked about with regard to this? I wanted to show a video. Maybe even I can show it before we close. But you know what? I'm looking here now, and I don't know if I know how.
Oh,
I'm not that.
I think one of my questions was for Melissa because the process is very separated. I don't know who the verifiers are. I don't, and I was curious if they were excited about the project or if they were just exhausted by having gone through all our documentation.
No, I feel that I really can speak on behalf of the verification team that all of us who were involved are extremely thrilled to have been a part of this. And in fact, we don't actually allow verifiers to come out and say, oh, I was the one who reviewed that project. And there's, sound reasons for it. But this is one of these instances where I feel like the learning and growth and pride has really just swelled for all of us being involved, and really sincerely think that the project is great. Yes, for sure, for us it was a lot of work too, but it should be for especially a project of this size and scale. Of course there's going to be a lot more documentation to review. Of course there's going to be a lot of wanting to have a bit more dialogue than we might, you know, on some smaller projects because of the complexity. But, you know, kudos to everybody involved. It paid off, and we are thrilled and, you know, not exhausted anymore. There's enough time has passed where now, just like you, we can focus on this is done, it's being verified, it's an awesome project, and we're happy to be celebrating it with you.
Right, good.
Before we close, I want to ask if there's anything we've missed, anything you want to reiterate or talk about. I know that I personally want to say go to their website and look at all their videos and the pictures. They're really cool. I have
a sustainability report too. If you haven't read it, it's like amazing. It really succinctly like zeroes in on all of the benefits. So definitely check that out on the website as well.
Great.
Yeah, there's a wealth of information there from the very beginning to up to date. Just every annual report you've got on it, and just people want to really know how to do this. I mean, you guys are paving the way, you know.
Yes, and we're always happy to talk about what we're doing. We're happy to talk about what's going well, what's not going well. The sustainability report is a great. We find it an incredibly useful opportunity every year to just kind of take a quick look at a whole host of metrics and make sure we're progressing against them. And I would say follow us on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've got a lot of great content that our excellent communications teams pulls together, and really, you know, in some instances, they tease out the personal individual stories about people involved in the project, or point out aspects of the projects that are going on that humanize a mega project, which is great, which is really helpful in terms of communicating what's happening.
Yeah, I think your communications team is doing an awesome job. I mean, so many great pictures and, you know, profiles of people. So I always try to share them on our own social media because it is really a positive project. And I think, you know, like I said, people can look to this and see how we can do this in other places and really take off, you know, to make a difference. So thank you, Meg. Absolutely. I appreciate it. All right. Well, I'm going to play the outro music. I'm going to thank everybody and we will catch you next time.
Great. Thanks so much.